Normally when I travel, I always bring my camera to capture the trip, just because I enjoy filming. Well, that's kinda obvious, but what about the details in between? So to start, it's good to map out your locations you travel to, and kind of know what to expect at each location. When you know ahead of time, you'll know how to use your camera, what to capture, and so forth. For example, when I planned out my trip to Portugal, specifically at a farmer's market, I knew that I wanted to get more close-up shots. It's to show a feeling of a place, of how people interact there. Or when I went around the iconic landmarks, I went to get establishing wide shots. So I used my Panasonic 9mm wide-angle lens and put my camera on a gimbal to get those types of shots. Other things to consider is your mode of transportation. When you travel, how are you getting around to each place and how you want to film throughout? And is it convenient to do so? Because sometimes you are carrying luggage, sometimes you are traveling with friends and family, and so forth. For example, my train ride in Japan was long and I wanted to capture just passing through the city with different lenses. I had enough space to comfortably take out my gear to do so. Now the opposite was when I was taking a crowded, quick bus ride in Portugal. I had to keep it very simple and use what I felt was right in that moment. As I was standing in the bus and was coming from one landmark location and going to another landmark location, in which I would stick with using the same stuff. Though it might not be the right or preferred filming equipment, it was a choice I felt was best. Planning the right moments to switch up equipment. Yes, ideally it would be best to have a go-to-one everything gear for maximum efficiency, but for me personally, I like to add a little bit more to just enjoy it. It's a way to keep me inspired to try different things while I'm out there filming. For example, I used to just bring my 25mm lens for all my travel trips, but after a while it felt repetitive. I started off simple and decided to add in a kit lens to my travel. Then I added my gimbal and then another lens and so forth. Some questions that you might want to ask: how do I determine to use close-up or wide? How do I determine gimbal or handheld? And then you can also ask the question, is it safe? Is it crowded? Is there open space? How comfortable do I feel when I take this amount of gear into this area? Am I comfortable to get looks? Will I be holding my family or friends up when I'm switching lenses? It really is up to you. For me, I just need good wide shots to establish a place, then some close-up people interactions of the place. I just wanted to share my thoughts on how I go about it. So let's talk about what do I bring and why. To start, this is the backpack I use. It's not the best with padding, but it carries all the things that I need. It also looks more like a normal backpack and doesn't stand out. This is good, especially in places where you're unfamiliar and don't want to get too much attention. I also put a camera quick release plate on the strap itself. I did lose a screw, so alternatively, I just got a screw at Home Depot to replace it, and it works really well. It's, a bit heavy and kind of pulls a little bit given my, camera weight. But overall, as long as it sticks, I'm pretty happy with it. I set up some padding inside accordingly. I actually used some other paddings from my old packs and other stuff, like this box from my light that I got. Originally, the camera pack opened this way, but I switched it to the other side so that way no one can open it freely, and if they do, there's nothing there. Going back to the Falcon backpack quick release plate, I use all Falcon quick releases as they are decent price and good quality compared to perhaps what is out there. I also have a backpack rain cover just in case it, rains. I haven't used it yet, but I just want to have that just in case. The DJI RS3 Mini. I bring this with me as it's super light and small compared to what's out there. I also like this because it doubles as a small tripod. I usually balance my camera setup beforehand to make sure I can quickly go handheld and back on the gimbal when I want to. I usually use the 9mm lens on here, but sometimes I throw my 25mm lens on there as well. It's not often, but it's still an option. So let's talk about the battery. So this is the battery case that I keep both my G85 battery and GoPro batteries inside. When I get back to my accommodations, it's kind of like the first thing I do. You go in and you charge. I bring a couple of SD cards to swap out in case. Never really filled up a card, just given the footage I usually take is very short. I also bring a hard drive so that at the end of the day I have the option to offload my footage onto it. Since I usually don't bring a laptop, I would just use my phone to do this. I am using the DJI mic as they are small, light, and compact. Only downside I have with these is that, they're just battery powered. So when I do run out, I would have to use my camera audio if I'm not in like an ideal location to swap them out. My friend gave this light to me and I found it very small and portable. I have yet to use it, but I would definitely be bringing this along. The best use case scenario I can see for this is maybe like in a dark hotel room where there's not enough light. I'll update this once I do travel with it though. So I have been using my G85 given its size and capabilities, and I don't need much else. I either use it with a gimbal or handheld, and of course some variation of lenses, ND filters, and mist filters. I also bring my GoPro as well. So how I use this is pretty interesting. I usually set up my GoPro when I know I want to use my close-up lenses for more detailed shots and don't have enough time to switch between lenses. I also use this if I want to make a quick hyperlapse of a location without having to do a hyperlapse the old-fashioned way on a camera. So there are 3 camera lenses I usually bring: the 25mm, the Helios 44, and the 9mm. Now the 9mm is more for the establishing shots and the gimbal movement shots. I also like to use this to film myself. It's wide enough to place in different scenarios and can capture my moments. The 25mm is more for my interaction shots, but also some scenery shots as well. My definition of interaction shots is essentially people interacting with one another in a location or interacting with a location in itself. It gives a little bit more of a feeling or emotion to a place through a visual perspective. Also, if I want to capture interaction shots quickly and utilize the G85's pre-focus button, which is faster than manual focusing on the Ring, then I would just use this lens. The Helios 44. I just use this mostly to capture people interactions from afar or scenes that are a bit further out given the crop factor on the Micro Four Thirds with this lens. I use a speed booster so the crop factor isn't too much. Also, it can add in lower light capabilities. And then I also just like using this lens as it's really fun to shoot with. I think it's just because it's a manual lens, and given that aspect, I'm trying to get the perfect focus. It's pretty fun. I would say use this lens if you have time at a location and aren't too rushed in between. ND and mist filters. I attach these to my camera lenses. I have the mist filters on both my Panasonic lenses. As for NDs, the one I like to use is the Kenko ND filter, just because it works in both light and dark situations with my Micro Four Thirds. It's got like vignetting and also crossfading issues, and sometimes actually I see some color imbalances. So I would say that this is more of an on the go, given that I can still leave it on in some low light situations. So for example, when I'm coming from an outdoor and then going into an indoor scene, I can still keep this ND filter on without having to raise the ISO too much. This ND filter is more efficient to use, but I sacrifice a bit on some other aspects in terms of like its quality. I also put the filter cases in accordingly in my backpack, so that way it's easy to grab. Inside this toolbox, I have some Allen keys, some small screws as backups, and also a tightening tool. This comes in handy when my gear needs some adjustments or I'm just needing to tighten things up. I also have a thin mouse pad in case my filters get stuck together, which happens sometimes, so then I can pull these apart. I brought this lamp. It actually provided some really useful setups to film myself with. It consists of like a ball head tripod, and this one is pretty decent quality. I also bring some wipes and a blower for my camera. And lastly, I bring this camera wrist strap. I guess at the end of the day, whatever gear you find yourself using the most in the travel scenes you plan to shoot in, pack that. Try to keep it light and efficient, and pack the things that will make you enjoy the process. Hopefully this gives you some insight to how I go about filming my travels. It's good to think these things ahead of time so you can make it more efficient and enjoyable for yourself.